The notification light on my phone blinked insistently in the darkness of my bedroom, pulling me from the edge of sleep. 3:17 in the morning. I squinted at the screen, my heart doing that familiar skip when I saw his name. Marcus. We hadn't spoken in 2 weeks, not since that awkward conversation where we both pretended we were fine with being just friends after our breakup 6 months ago. Can't sleep, his message read. Keep thinking about us. I stared at those words for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. The rational part of my brain, the part that had spent months rebuilding itself after our relationship ended, screamed at me to put the phone down and go back to sleep. But there was another part, quieter but more insistent, that remembered how his laugh sounded in the morning, how he always made coffee exactly the way I liked it without being asked. It's late. I typed back, then deleted it. Too dismissive. What about us? Delete. Too eager. Finally, I settled on something neutral. Everything okay? The response came immediately, as if he'd been waiting, phone in hand. Not really. I miss you, Jenna. I miss us. I know we said we'd try to be friends, but I can't stop thinking about how things used to be. My chest tightened. This was dangerous territory, the kind of conversation that had led to our messy breakup in the first place. We'd been together for 3 years, living together for the last one, and it had been good. Really good. Until it wasn't. Until the fights about his job consuming his life, about my need for more emotional intimacy, about the future we couldn't seem to agree on, became more frequent than the good moments. Marcus. I started typing, then stopped. What was I supposed to say? That I missed him too? That I'd been sleeping on his side of the bed for weeks after he moved out because it still smelled like him? That I'd started 3 different text conversations with him over the past month and deleted them all? I know. I finally sent. It's complicated. Can I come over? Just to talk. I promise. Every rational thought in my head said no. It was past 3 in the morning. We were broken up for good reasons. This was exactly the kind of situation that would set back all the progress I'd made in moving on. But my fingers were already typing yes before my brain could stop them. 20 minutes later, I heard his key in the lock. I'd forgotten to ask for it back, and apparently, he'd forgotten to give it. Or maybe neither of us had forgotten. Maybe we'd both been holding on to these small threads of connection, these excuses to keep each other in our lives. He appeared in my bedroom doorway, and my heart clenched at how familiar he looked. Same messy dark hair that never quite cooperated, same gray eyes that always seemed to see right through me, same way of leaning against the doorframe like he belonged there. He was wearing the faded blue t-shirt I'd bought him for his birthday 2 years ago, the one he claimed was the most comfortable thing he owned. Hi, he said softly, and his voice carried all the weight of our history. Hi. I was sitting cross-legged on my bed, wearing an oversized sweater and pajama shorts, suddenly hyper-aware of how intimate this felt. Him in my bedroom at 3 in the morning, both of us in our pajamas like we were still together. He didn't move from the doorway at first, as if he was giving me a chance to change my mind, to tell him to leave. When I didn't, he stepped inside and closed the door behind him. The sound of the latch clicking felt significant somehow, like we were sealing ourselves into this moment together. I couldn't sleep, he said, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that I could smell his cologne, the same one he'd worn for years. I kept thinking about that night last month when you called me about your mom's surgery. How natural it felt to be the person you turned to when you were scared. I remembered that night. I'd been sitting in the hospital waiting room, terrified and alone, and I'd called him without thinking. He'd stayed on the phone with me for 3 hours, talking about everything and nothing until the doctor came out with good news. Afterward, I'd felt guilty for reaching out, for crossing the boundaries we'd tried to establish. That was different, I said. That was an emergency. Was it? He turned to face me more fully, and I could see the exhaustion in his eyes. Or was it just the first time in months that we both stopped pretending we don't still care about each other? I pulled my knees up to my chest, creating a barrier between us. Marcus, we broke up for good reasons. We wanted different things. We couldn't communicate without fighting. Nothing's changed, hasn't it? He shifted closer, and I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. I've been thinking about everything you said, about how I prioritized work over us, about how I shut down when things got difficult. I've been working on it, Jenna. I started seeing a therapist. This surprised me. Marcus had always been resistant to the idea of therapy, claiming he could work through his problems on his own. It was one of the things we'd fought about. That's good, I said carefully. I'm glad you're taking care of yourself. I'm not doing it just for me, he said. I mean, I am, but also, I keep thinking about us. About how good we were together when we weren't fighting. About how you're the first person I want to talk to when something good happens, and the only person I want comfort from when things go wrong. My throat felt tight. Marcus, I know I hurt you, he continued, his voice getting quieter. I know I was selfish and stubborn, and I took you for granted. But I also know that what we had was real and rare, and I was an idiot to let my pride get in the way of fighting for it. I stared at him, searching his face for signs of the same patterns that had destroyed us before. The tendency to say what he thought I wanted to hear when he was feeling vulnerable, only to retreat back into his old behaviors once the crisis passed. You said that before, I reminded him. After our first big fight about your job, you promised things would change. They didn't. You're right, he said, and his honesty caught me off guard. I made promises I wasn't ready to keep because I was scared of losing you, but I wasn't willing to do the actual work. I thought wanting to change was enough. I was wrong. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, opening what looked like a calendar app. I've been tracking my hours at work. 60-hour weeks, down from 80. I turn my phone off after 8 p.m. now. I've been going to therapy every Tuesday for 2 months. I joined a hiking group to meet people outside of work. He showed me the screen, and I could see detailed logs of his activities, his work hours, even his sleep schedule. You're tracking your sleep? I asked, surprised by the level of detail. My therapist suggested it. Turns out I was using work as an excuse to avoid dealing with my feelings about us. The busier I kept myself, the less I had to think about how much I missed you. I felt something crack open in my chest, a space that had been carefully sealed shut. I missed you too, I admitted. I tried not to, but I did. I know we can't just pick up where we left off, he said. I know I have to prove that I've actually changed, not just say it. But Jenna, I love you. I never stopped loving you. And I think, if you're honest, you never stopped loving me either. He was right, and we both knew it. The love had never been the problem. It was everything else. All the ways we'd failed each other, all the needs that went unmet, all the conversations we'd avoided until they became fights. Love isn't enough, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. We tried for 3 years, Marcus. We hurt each other over and over again. We were young, he said. We didn't know how to love each other properly, but we could learn. I looked at him sitting there on my bed, vulnerable and hopeful and so achingly familiar. 6 months ago, I would have said yes immediately, would have fallen into his arms and pretended that wanting something badly enough could make it work. But I'd spent these months apart learning to be alone, learning to like myself without needing his validation, learning what I actually needed from a partner. What would be different this time? I asked. Really different, not just promises. He was quiet for a moment, considering. I'd want us to go slow. Like, really slow. Maybe start with coffee dates, actual dates where we talk and get to know each other again. I'd want us both to keep seeing our therapists individually. I'd want to set boundaries around work and stick to them, even when it's hard. And if we start fighting again, then we fight better. We don't just shut down or storm out. We stay and figure it out, even if it's uncomfortable. I pulled my sweater tighter around myself. I don't know if I can risk getting hurt like that again. I can't promise you won't get hurt, he said. I can't promise I won't make mistakes. But I can promise that I'll try harder than I did before. And I can promise that losing you was the worst thing that's ever happened to me, and I'll do whatever it takes to not let it happen again. The sincerity in his voice made my chest ache. This was the Marcus I'd fallen in love with, the one who showed up when it mattered, who wasn't afraid to be vulnerable when it counted. I'm scared, I whispered. Me too, he said. But I'm more scared of spending the rest of my life wondering what if. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of possibility hanging between us. Outside, I could hear the distant sound of traffic, the city slowly waking up. Soon it would be dawn, and this moment would feel less magical, more complicated. I missed cuddling, he said suddenly, his voice soft and almost shy. I know that sounds stupid, but I missed falling asleep next to you. I missed waking up and seeing your face first thing. I missed the way you always steal the covers and then complain that you're cold. I laughed despite myself. I do not steal the covers. You absolutely do. You wrap yourself up like a burrito and leave me with like 6 inches of blanket. That's not stealing, That's efficient distribution. Efficient distribution, he repeated, grinning. I missed your ridiculous justifications for everything. The familiar banter felt like slipping into a warm bath, comfortable and soothing, and exactly what I'd been missing without realizing it. This was what we'd been good at, the easy intimacy, the way we could make each other laugh even in the middle of serious conversations. I missed your terrible jokes, I admitted. And the way you sing in the shower, even though you're completely tone deaf. Hey, I have excellent pitch. You sound like a dying cat. A very melodious dying cat. We were both smiling now, and the tension in the room had shifted into something warmer, more hopeful. I found myself studying his face, noting the new lines around his eyes, the way his hair was slightly longer than he usually kept it. He looked older, but also somehow more settled, like he'd grown into himself in the months we'd been apart. Can I ask you something? I said. Anything. That night you called me about your promotion, why didn't you celebrate with your coworkers? You always used to do that. He looked down at his hands. Because it didn't feel real without you there. Because I kept thinking about how you always said my job was more important to me than you were. And when I got the promotion, all I wanted was to share it with you. It made me realize you were right. Nothing felt important if I couldn't share it with you. My heart did that fluttering thing again. Marcus, I know it's not enough, he said quickly. I know one realization doesn't undo 3 years of making you feel like you came second. But it was the beginning of understanding what I'd lost. I reached out without thinking and touched his hand. His fingers immediately intertwined with mine, and the contact sent a shock of familiarity through me. His hands were exactly as I remembered them, slightly rough from his weekend woodworking hobby, warm and steady and safe. I don't know how to do this, I said. I don't know how to trust that this time will be different. We don't have to figure it all out tonight, he said. We could just start with being honest about what we want. What do you want? You, he said simply. I want another chance with you. I want to wake up next to you and make you coffee and argue about what to watch on Netflix. I want to meet your friends and have you meet mine. I want to plan a future that includes both of us. And if it doesn't work out, then at least we'll know we tried everything we could. I studied his face, looking for any sign of the old Marcus, the one who made promises he couldn't keep, who prioritized everything else over our relationship. But all I saw was sincerity and hope and a kind of quiet determination I'd never seen before. I want that too, I admitted. But I'm terrified. We'll be terrified together, he said, bringing our joined hands up to his lips and pressing a soft kiss to my knuckles. We'll figure it out as we go. The gesture was so gentle, so full of tenderness, that I felt tears prick at my eyes. This was what I'd missed most. Not just the physical affection, but the way he could make me feel cherished with the smallest actions. It's almost dawn, I said, noting the way the darkness outside my window was starting to soften around the edges. I should probably go, he said, but he made no move to leave. Let you get some sleep. You could stay, I said before I could stop myself. Just to sleep. We could just see what it feels like. He looked at me with such hope that it made my chest tight. Are you sure? I wasn't sure about anything, but I nodded anyway. Just sleeping. We can talk more tomorrow. Today, he corrected, glancing at the window. It's already tomorrow. Today, then. He stood up and walked around to what used to be his side of the bed, moving slowly like he was afraid I might change my mind. I watched him pull back the covers and slide in, maintaining careful distance between us. We lay there for a moment, both of us staring at the ceiling, hyper-aware of each other's presence. This is weird, I said. Good weird or bad weird? I don't know yet. He turned onto his side to face me, and I could feel the weight of his gaze even in the dim light. Can I tell you something? Yeah. I haven't slept well in months. I keep reaching for you in my sleep and finding empty space. My throat tightened. Marcus, I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, he said quickly. I just want you to know that being here with you, it feels like coming home. I turned to face him, and we were suddenly much closer than we'd been all night. I could see the flecks of green in his gray eyes, could count the freckles across his nose that only appeared in summer. Everything about him was familiar and foreign at the same time. I used to sleep with your pillow, I admitted, for weeks after you moved out, until it stopped smelling like you. I kept one of your sweaters, he said. The blue one you always wore when you were stressed. I know I should have given it back, but you didn't want to let go completely. No, I didn't. We lay there looking at each other, and I could feel the pull between us, the magnetic force that had always existed. It would be so easy to close the distance, to let myself fall back into the familiar comfort of his arms. But I also knew that physical intimacy had always been our way of avoiding difficult conversations, of papering over problems instead of solving them. We should probably try to sleep, I said. Yeah, he agreed, but neither of us moved. Marcus, I'm glad you texted me tonight. He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him all evening. Me too. I closed my eyes and tried to focus on my breathing, on the sound of rain that had started pattering against the window. But I was acutely aware of Marcus beside me, of the way his breathing gradually slowed and deepened, of the warmth radiating from his body across the small space between us. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, I was waking up to the feeling of arms around me. For a moment, I was disoriented, caught between dream and reality. Then I realized that sometime during the night, we'd gravitated toward each other. Marcus was spooned behind me, one arm draped over my waist, his face buried in my hair. I should have pulled away. We'd agreed to just sleep, to take things slow, to be careful with each other's hearts. But he felt so warm and solid and right against me, and it had been so long since I'd felt this safe, this held. His breathing was still deep and even, and I could tell he was truly asleep. This wasn't a conscious choice to hold me. It was instinct, muscle memory, his body seeking mine even in unconsciousness. The realization made something warm bloom in my chest. I let myself relax into his embrace, just for a moment, just to see how it felt. It felt like coming home. I must have fallen back asleep, because when I woke again, sunlight was streaming through my bedroom window, and Marcus was stirring behind me. I felt him tense as he realized our position, felt him start to pull away. Sorry, he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. I didn't mean to. It's okay, I said, turning in his arms to face him. His hair was sticking up at odd angles, and there was a crease on his cheek from the pillow. He looked younger somehow, vulnerable and sweet, and exactly like the man I'd fallen in love with for years ago. Hi, he said softly. Hi. We lay there looking at each other in the morning light, and I could see all the questions in his eyes. What did this mean? Where did we go from here? Were we really going to try again? How did you sleep? I asked. Better than I have in months, he admitted. You. Same. He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, the gesture so familiar and tender that it made my heart ache. What are you thinking? I was thinking that this felt right in a way that scared me. I was thinking that I wanted to kiss him, wanted to let myself fall back into the easy intimacy we'd always shared. I was thinking that maybe love could be enough if we were both willing to do the work. I'm thinking that I want to try, I said. Slowly, carefully, but I want to try. His face lit up with such joy that it took my breath away. Really, really. But Marcus, I need you to understand that this isn't just picking up where we left off. We're different people now. We have to get to know each other again, build trust again. And if we start falling into the same patterns, we won't, he said firmly. I won't let us. You can't control everything, I said. We both have to be committed to doing things differently. I am, he said. I promise you, Jenna, I am. I studied his face, looking for any sign of the old Marcus, the one who made promises in moments of crisis that he couldn't keep when things got comfortable again. But all I saw was sincerity and determination and a kind of quiet confidence that felt new. Okay, I said. Let's try. He leaned forward and pressed his forehead against mine, and we breathed the same air for a moment, sharing the weight of this decision. Can I take you to breakfast? He asked. Somewhere neutral, public. A proper first date. I smiled. I'd like that. And maybe we could talk about ground rules. Expectations. How we want to do this. Look at you, being all emotionally mature, I teased. I've been practicing, he said with a grin. We got up and got dressed, moving around each other with the careful politeness of people who were trying to respect new boundaries while navigating old intimacies. It was strange and awkward, and somehow hopeful all at once. Over breakfast at a little cafe downtown, we talked about what we wanted this second chance to look like. We agreed to take things slow, to date each other properly instead of just falling back into the comfort of living together. We agreed to keep seeing our therapists individually and maybe consider couples counseling down the line. We agreed to be honest about our fears and needs, even when it was uncomfortable. I want to meet your hiking group, I said over coffee. Yeah? You hate hiking. I hate hiking with you because you always try to turn it into some kind of endurance test. But I might like hiking with normal people who stop to look at flowers and don't care about beating their previous time. He laughed. Fair point. And I want to come to your book club. You hate book clubs. You said they were pretentious. I said that because I was jealous that you had this whole part of your life that didn't include me. I want to be part of your world, Jenna. All of it. This was new. This willingness to engage with the parts of my life he'd previously dismissed. It gave me hope that maybe he really had changed, that maybe we both had. We spent the morning talking, really talking in a way we hadn't done in years. About our fears and hopes, about what we'd learned about ourselves in the months apart, about what we wanted our future to look like. It felt like discovering each other all over again, like meeting the people we'd become in our time apart. When he walked me back to my apartment, we stood awkwardly on my doorstep, unsure how to end this new kind of date. I had a really good time, he said formally, and I laughed. Me too. Very proper first date behavior. I'm trying to be a gentleman. You can kiss me, I said. If you want to. I want to, he said seriously. But I also want to do this right. Can I call you tomorrow? Maybe we could go to that farmer's market you always wanted to check out. My heart did a little flip at the reference. I'd mentioned wanting to go to the farmer's market dozens of times when we were together, but he'd always been too busy or too tired or too focused on other things. I'd like that, I said. He leaned in and kissed my cheek, soft and sweet and full of promise. Thank you, he said, for giving us another chance. Thank you for doing the work to deserve one. I watched him walk away, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely hopeful about the future. Not because I thought it would be easy, but because I could see that we were both willing to try harder this time, to be better for each other and for ourselves. That afternoon, I called my best friend Sarah to tell her what had happened. She was skeptical, as I'd expected her to be. She'd been the one to hold me while I cried for weeks after our breakup, the one who'd listened to me catalog all of Marcus's flaws and failures as a partner. Are you sure about this? She asked. I mean, I get that people can change, but Jenna, he really hurt you. You spent months rebuilding yourself after he left. I know, I said, and I'm not going into this blindly. We're taking it slow, we're both in therapy, we're actually talking about our problems instead of just hoping they'll go away. And if he reverts to his old patterns? Then I'll leave, I said, and I meant it. I know what I'm worth now, Sarah. I know what I need from a relationship. If he can't give me that, then we're not right for each other, no matter how much we love each other. Okay, she said, though I could hear the reservation in her voice. I trust your judgment. Just promise me you'll be careful with your heart. I promise. That evening, Marcus texted me a photo of a sunset from his apartment balcony with the message, thinking of you. It was simple and sweet, and exactly the kind of gesture I'd always wished for when we were together. The old Marcus would have been too busy with work to notice the sunset, let alone think to share it with me. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a pattern of careful courtship. He took me to the farmer's market as promised, and we spent hours wandering between stalls, sampling cheese and buying flowers and talking about everything and nothing. He came to my book club and actually engaged with the discussion, asking thoughtful questions and sharing his own insights. I went hiking with his group and discovered that I actually enjoyed it when it wasn't a competition. We had dinner dates and coffee dates and long walks through the city. We texted throughout the day, sharing small moments and inside jokes. We talked on the phone in the evenings, sometimes for hours, getting to know each other again. And slowly, carefully, we began to trust each other again. There were moments of awkwardness, times when old patterns threatened to resurface. The first time we disagreed about something significant, we both tensed, waiting for the fight that had always followed disagreement in our relationship. But instead of shutting down or getting defensive, we talked through it. We listened to each other's perspectives and found a compromise that worked for both of us. That was different, I said afterward, and he nodded. Good different. Very good different. A month into our second chance, he invited me to his apartment for dinner. It was the first time I'd been there since our breakup, and I was nervous about how it would feel to be in that space again. But when I arrived, I was surprised by how different it looked. He'd redecorated, gotten rid of the dark, masculine furniture we'd chosen together and replaced it with lighter, warmer pieces. There were plants on the windowsills, books on the coffee table, art on the walls that actually meant something to him instead of just filling space. It looks amazing, I said, and I meant it. The space felt like him now, like the person he was becoming rather than the person he'd been. I wanted it to feel like home, he said. Really home, not just a place to sleep between workdays. He'd cooked for me, something he'd rarely done when we were together. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad and garlic bread, but he'd clearly put thought and effort into it. We ate by candlelight and talked about our days, and it felt both familiar and new. After dinner, we sat on his couch, and for the first time in weeks, the careful distance we'd been maintaining felt strained. We'd been so good about taking things slow, about not rushing into physical intimacy, but the pull between us was getting harder to ignore. "Jinnah," he said softly, and I could hear the question in his voice. "I know," I said. "I feel it too. I don't want to push you. I don't want to mess this up by moving too fast." I turned to face him fully, studying his face in the candlelight. What if we're not moving too fast? What if we're just moving at the right pace for us? He reached out and cupped my face in his hands, his thumbs stroking across my cheekbones. "Are you sure?" Instead of answering with words, I leaned in and kissed him. It was soft and tentative at first, both of us relearning the shape of each other's lips, the taste of each other's mouths. But then he made a soft sound of recognition and need, and the kiss deepened, became more urgent. We broke apart, breathing hard, and I could see all the love and longing in his eyes that I'd been trying so hard to protect myself from. "I love you," he said. "I never stopped loving you. I love you too." I whispered, and saying it felt like coming home. We made love that night, slow and careful and full of tenderness. It was different from how it had been before, when physical intimacy had sometimes felt like a way to avoid emotional intimacy. This felt like a conversation, like we were telling each other with our bodies all the things we'd learned to say with words. Afterward, we lay tangled together in his bed, and I felt more at peace than I had in months. "I missed this," he said, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. "Not just the sex, but this. Holding you. Feeling close to you. I missed it too," I admitted. "I missed feeling like I belonged somewhere." "You belong with me," he said. "If you want to. If you're ready." I lifted my head to look at him. "Are you asking me to move back in?" "I'm asking if you want to start thinking about a future together. Not tomorrow, not next week, but eventually. When we're both ready." I considered this, testing the idea against my fears and hopes. 6 months ago, the thought of planning a future with Marcus would have filled me with anxiety, with the knowledge that his promises were fragile things that broke under pressure. But now, looking at the man he'd become, the work he'd done, the way he'd shown up for me consistently over these past weeks, I felt something different. I felt hope. "I'd like that," I said. "Eventually." "Eventually," he agreed, and I could hear the smile in his voice. We talked late into the night about what that future might look like. A house with a garden, maybe, somewhere we could both feel settled. Travel, the kind we'd always talked about but never made time for. Maybe kids someday, when we were both ready for that kind of responsibility. Dreams that felt possible now in a way they hadn't before. "I want to do this right," he said as we were finally drifting off to sleep. "I want to be the partner you deserve." "You already are," I said, and I meant it. The next morning, I woke up in his arms again, and this time there was no awkwardness, no careful distance. Just the comfortable intimacy of two people who'd chosen each other, who'd done the work to deserve each other. "Good morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Good morning. Sleep well." "Like a baby," I said, stretching against him. "You?" "Best I've slept in months," he said, echoing what he'd said that first night. "I think I'm going to sleep well for a very long time." I smiled and settled back into his embrace, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against my cheek. Outside, the city was waking up, but in here, in this moment, everything felt perfect. We'd found our way back to each other, not by ignoring the problems that had torn us apart the first time, but by facing them head-on, by doing the work to become better people and better partners. It hadn't been easy, and I knew it wouldn't always be easy going forward. But for the first time in a long time, I believed we could handle whatever came next. Together.